Yes, hi, good morning. It's me, Melik Khachiyan again. And today we will continue talk about endgames since I receiving many requests by providing endgame lessons. And last time I started to talk about typical mistakes in endgames, especially Rook endgames. It's very common type of endgames in general. So today we'll continue the same series. First example, it's from games between two masters in Hungary, Portuguese Bureau, back to 1996. And right here, Black's turn. But before I'll get back to this position, I would like just to remind you, let's say, one of the most popular defensive stuff in Rook endgames, in actually basic Rook endgames, where Rook and Pawn versus Rook. So I guess everyone knows position of Philidor. Let's say if we imagine White King stands here on e5, then obviously everyone will tell, hey, you know what? Right here we have to play Rook h6 and cut the 6th rank, wait until White pawn will be pushed on f6, and then get back, let's say, to h1 and attack the king from behind. Right, that's true. It's actually called Philidor defense. Everyone knows. Great. But what to do in situation when actually White King stands already on e6? How to defend this position? You can't really play here Rook h6 check since we have f6 and we actually lost here. So what to do right here? How to defend this position? And you can't really go to the long side to try to attack the king from the side because first of all, not many lines involved, and secondly, let's say we try to play Rook b2. Then after Rook a8 check, followed by f6 check, game is over immediately. So we can't do that. So defense here, some people call this defense, it's actually a continuation of Philidor defense. Some people call this a Lasker defense. Honestly, I'm not really sure about the name of the defense. I've been told by my first coach it's actually a Lasker defense, but it's fine with me if you will call this like a second part of Philidor defense. So the right way to deal with this position is Rook f2. Always keep your Rook behind the pawn in case if you're not able to get original Philidor defense, or in case you cannot get position when your Rook attacking from the side, White King. So here, Rook f2, King f6. Now, this is another important moment here. In these situations, always run to the short corner, to the short side. That means running to this way will be the biggest mistake. So you have to run right here. King g8 and Rook a8 check, King h7. And anytime when White trying to improve position by playing King a6, trying to, let's say, proceed his pawn, then you play here King g7 and both pieces, Rook and King, defending, guarding f6 square, and White pawn has no improvement, and that's simply a draw because he simply stands here and the same thing repeats again. So White has no improvement and we are having a simple draw. Now check how that happened in a game when two masters, without having any time trouble, actually didn't know what's going on and actually they made a mistake. So in the original position, Black made a move, Rook e2 check. So this is like first mistake, first step to make a biggest mistake. And after King f6, they made a horrible move. They made here move Rook e8, which is immediately pretty much losing the game because you can't remember this. In Rook endgames, in general, in all endgames, but especially Rook endgames, the one rule you must know, you cannot defend position passively. Always have to try to find a way how to let's say, create active defense, especially for the Rook. The Rook cannot get passive position. All your value assets from your position come how active your Rook. So Rook e8 and King g6, and that's it. Pretty much game is over. So you try to get back, and then after Rook e8, they resign. In fact, if you look at the move 2, and some people will say game is over right here already, but it's not exactly entirely true because even here I have a chance to make a draw because after King g8, still running to the short side, let's say check here, and let's say here, looks like white improved the position, but rook b2 here still enough to make a draw. Because if you check my previous lecture, it's actually explained why. Because we have 3 files difference between my rook and the pawn. That means I have enough space to attack the king from the sides. And since I have 3 files, I'm simply making a draw. White will have no improvement. I will keep checking the white king until white king will go away, and that's it. As soon as I get this position, it's actually an easy draw. Okay, so that's how the first example, how black didn't know the very famous position and they didn't know what to do. Again, I'm going to get back to that later about explaining the moment why it's important to keep the king on the short side, not on the long side. You'll see the other example, but this is the way how we called second part of Philidor defense. If you are not able to defend the rank, defend the file, and put your rook behind the rook. I mean behind the pawn. And simple again. I'm going to remind you, this is a simple draw. So second position, I'd like to show you. It's going to be from famous game Bernd Spielmann. Back to at that time one of the most famous tournament in San Sebastian, 1911. I think that's officially one of the last tournament has been won by Zygmunt Taras. So let's see who announced himself, by the way, tournament king. That's another famous position here. So again, 2 grandmasters. I mean, at that time, I'm not sure it was called grandmaster. Maybe it's called grandmaestro. Anyway, so Bernd Spielmann, 1911. So in here, by knowing second Philidor, principle of defense, right here, the right move to go would be here. Again, because we cannot put like a regional Philidor position. You cannot attack the king from side, from rank, by ranks. So the way is rook c4, putting your rook behind the pawn, king c6, and running to the short side. That's how you're supposed to defend, because again, it's pretty much same things. Check here, here, and here, and we are in perfect shape to defend this position. Okay, so that's the way how we're supposed to go. In fact, in original position, you can even play even this way is fine. I mean, it's still okay. It's still not losing. It's a little bit longer, but still not losing. But again, the right way, the more absolute right way here is to do, remember, put your rook behind the pawn by file. Simple. And run to the short side. Run to the short side, and you are absolutely, okay here. Now, check the game, what's happening in a game. In a game, black went rook e7, which already a mistake. And now I'll explain you why. So, mistake because first, what's supposed to do to kick the king of having chance of being on the short side, and then kicking the king pretty much. Now, obviously, the pawn will fall anyway. So black trying to activate the rook by playing rook e1. And now we have a situation when, again, there is no way you could get a Philidor defense by attacking from sides. So you're supposed to play here rook c1. And now that's a difference which I had explained to you. I was trying to explain to you in previous position. So this is applied only for pretty much C and B pawn, especially for C pawn. So reason why we lost here, because it looks like we will apply the same principles. Check this out. Looks like we're still okay. We're still defending c6 square. White has no progress, and looks like we actually still holding a draw. But that's not true. That position is lost because difference when your king goes on the long side, the reason why we're losing here is actually because rook c8. That's why this position is actually lost. And what's going on here? You put your rook behind the pawn, and then your king goes on b7 simply, and there is no improvement. If you check me from behind, let's say by having to be one check, I play rook, king c7. I'll keep improving my position, and you will lose. That's the reason why king must be on the short side. Just remember this and try to memorize. It's called Lucena, position of Lucena. I think this position was discovered in the 18th century, maybe 19th century. I'm not sure actually the time frame when Lucena been living. I just remember like from childish time, so it's a Lucena position. So that again, that situation applied against bishop's pawn. Let's say if we look at another position, which is really important for you guys to know again. Let's say if you push the situation, let me clear this board and then show you another important position. Let's say we have this situation, king on d6. For instance, put here pawn, and let's say rook here, and we have king here, and let's say try to still put the rook here. Let's try to give white's turn here, for instance. And in this situation, even my king on the long side, right? No, not on the short side. Even here, we have a draw because we still have enough space to make a draw thanks to weird position white rook on d8, and the way how you make a draw here by playing rook a1 immediately. Rook a1, and now pretty much white has no improvement, because if you make a king c7 move, I'll make a check and trying to, let's say, attack my rook, and then I have this king e7, which actually save my day, save my game. So that's why even having, let's say, two short files, it's enough for defensive side at this point to hold the game. That's really important for you guys to understand that. So in general, try to always keep your king on the short side. By having, let's say, if somehow your king has been located on the long side, always remember your chance to save a game in case of center pawns, like a D or E. Against F pawn, there is no way you will lose. I mean, you will defend the position, and even worse against a B pawn. Okay, so that's the law. That's actually the position which everyone pretty much must know. This defensive stuff. And that's what happened in the game. And another position I would like to talk today, it's actually came from a game of my former student Leon Aronian back to Moscow 2006. He played in Town Memorial against racing star at that time, Magnus Carlsen, who is now the greatest player so far. But at that time, he was not that strong yet. He was strong Grandmaster, but not that strong yet. And I'll show you another typical mistake which happened in that game. So, this is the original position from the game, Aronian Carlsen, Moscow 2006, Town Memorial. So, in this case, Magnus made a move which I'm not saying is a mistake, but not the right way to handle this position. As you see, his rook already on e-file, so we have a pretty much second defense of Philidor, right? Second principle. And my king actually on the short side, which is perfect. So basically, by playing the rook e2, for instance, there is no way white could improve this position. I mean, no way, seriously. Again, say if you play king d6, first of all, again, we have a king f7. If you play, I don't know, if you play rook d7 check, still king f8, so there is no improvement. So first, small mistake, inaccuracy, I would say, Magnus made by playing rook a1. Okay, well, he's trying to get position with his rook having 3-file difference between a rook and the pawn, so which is, according to theory, it's still a draw. Okay, we have here, all this move has been made pretty much really fast, and we have another important position. I think I had covered this last time. I'm going to cover once again kind of today. So to let you know, pretty much any move here, even theory's sake, you must play Rook E8, which is obviously the best move here. But I'll tell you what, pretty much any move, even Rook A1 is making a draw, because even Rook A1, it's actually making a draw, because at this point, if I give up my 8th rank, it's actually saving my day, because Rook on D7 is very weird, and white I have no improvement, and I'm making a draw. And why Rook A1 or A2 or A3 or A4 making a draws? Because, and against King F8, I have Rook F1 check, so I'm having access to F file, and that makes a draw here. Why I mentioned this position, some players, actually I had this with my students also, some players suggest here to play a Rook A6. And the funniest part is Rook A6 actually the only move which you lose here. And that actually happened in the game, a famous game between, I believe, Capablanca Veramenchik. I think it was something around 1930, 33, 35. I think it was actually in the Moscow tournament, if I'm not wrong. And that's the only square, in fact, which actually losing a game, because Rook will have no check from F6. And the original line, if you go over, it's actually lost for black. So in this case, black Rook has no access to make a check by F file, and that's why they're losing here. Now, in the game of Magnus Carlsen, Magnus made pretty much the original write the book move Rook A8. Rook A8. So they got in the 8th rank, and I remember when I've been working with Leon Aronian back to early 90s, and I actually had exactly the same position, and I told them that the only way, the last chance here, if you try to still pursue the win and try to win a game, the only trick here is to play Rook D6. That's the only way to, for your, let's say, last hope. Why it's last hope? You try to put your Rook on the 6th rank to make sure somehow you can control F6 square, and let's say against in future, for instance, Rook A7 check, you will get 8th rank immediately, and King F6 losing because E7 discovery check, and that's actually completely lost here. For people who doesn't know the way how we say supposed to win here, I think one of the simplest way, it's King G7, Rook D1. You're threatening to play Rook G1 check, creating the bridge. So check here, back, I think here. Now you try this to play King D8 and E8 Queen. Black must play King F6. They kick it again, check here, and finally playing Rook C1. And now the game is definitely over, because we simply winning by this. Okay. So back to a moment when we played Rook D6. Again, right here, Rook D6. So as you understood, you cannot give up access of, for 8th rank. So you must control the 8th rank, but also you cannot play Rook B8, because if you played here Rook B8, then you will lose 3 files, and you will have 3 files, and you will lose a game because of your Rook has just 2 files different between the Rook and the King. And the way how you will lose the game, it's very simple. You play Rook D8, Rook B7 check, and you play King D6, and game is over, because right here we attack the King. Attack the Rook with the tempo, and that's it. So you can't go Rook A7 because Rook D7 check, and game is over. All this short analysis showing you the right move which is supposed to be done here, and the move here, it's only the move actually, it's King G6, because there is rest of the moves are simply losing, and that's the only move which keeps your Rook on 8th rank and keeps your Rook on A file, and your Rook will have still 3 file difference, and that makes a draw. So, and what's happening in the game? Disaster, because in the game, Magnus made a move right here. So I'm sorry, okay, if I check a6, okay, so check here. Here with the 6, he made a move which lose immediately. He made rook a7 check, and after king a8, he just resigned. So when you ask me why that happening, Magnus Carlsen, who was rated, let's say, I don't know, over 2700 for many years, who was like one of the best players still at the time, back in 2006. So anyway, very top grandmaster. How that possible? So he didn't know the position? No, obviously he knew. Some people could say this is blackout, maybe, but my explanation, it's actually, I would say, a different way. I would say, you know, it's not enough for you to get theoretical knowledge. It's also important for you to get a practice. So make sure when you study your position, let's say, make sure you're, let's say, especially endgames, all these technical positions, make sure when you study them, you actually get back to them time to time, or you play them. You play them with computer. You play them with friends. So you make sure you still kind of reviewing them time to time, because again, it's not enough for you to know things. It's important for you to apply things, to apply your knowledge, and that's applying your knowledge. That makes us better players, because we are all players, all people reading the same books, all people study the same material, but how much material, how much percent of your material you'll be able to apply to your game? That's the question. That's why be careful with all these end games, study them carefully, and make sure you reviewing them time to time and having some playing access. I mean, you're playing them time to time, because again, knowing position. This is my strongest advice. Knowing position is not enough of playing them well. So make sure your knowledge is connected with your practice. Well, I hope you like it, and we will continue to talk about our end games in our next lesson. Thank you, and have a nice day.